So I think we'll take some questions in a Q&A session, but I want to make some brief remarks before we move to that. I'm glad that I'm not standing between you and your lunch, but I can tell I'm standing between you and your 2:30 nap for a couple people here. So we'll try and move along quickly. I worry hearing the past two presentations that it may sound to outsiders that we've been piling on Pakistan a little bit. And I want to let the audience know that from my perspective, that has been entirely deserved. And I don't say that because I'm anti-Pakistan or this is a pro-India audience. I say that because I've looked at this issue and the preponderance of evidence year after year suggests that they have been a focal point of the problem and that they have not had a change in their strategic mindset that supports Islamist extremists. This is not new to many of you, but it's something that I think we should be a little more comfortable just coming out and saying at times. We don't need to, continue to avoid recognizing the 800-pound gorilla in the room. So I heard a lot of people talk today about the Afghan elections, about talks with the Taliban, the zero troop option, U.S. force levels, women's rights. I agree with almost everything that was said. The problem is I fear it's all irrelevant. I don't know that any of this matters unless we have a fundamental change of the paradigm in the Pakistani establishment. And what's ironic is that the leaders of our own country have been saying that since the beginning of the Afghan war. I could pull up a laundry list of quotes from senior U.S. officials in the political establishment and the defense and intelligence establishment who have said over and over and over again, we cannot have progress in Afghanistan unless there's a change in Pakistan. And yet we have continued to try and tweak around the margins and work around this problem, and we've met with rather predictable and unfortunate results. So I hate to enter the Q&A session on a pessimistic note, but this is my sort of great concern and worry when it comes to Afghanistan. Who has a question?
My name is Malik Sirajapur. I'm a Pakistani journalist. Recently, there was a report in the New York Times about the regrouping of Taliban in Karachi. Would you kindly comment on it? What does it mean for Afghanistan? Is it like a tenure for the Taliban to refuel and reorganize? Because we also saw coordinated attacks by Lashkar-e-Jhangvi inside Afghanistan. So after 2014, is Afghanistan also going to experience sectarian attacks? And what does that all mean, the urbanization of the Taliban in Pakistani largest city of Karachi? Thank you.
Right now, the word Taliban begs a definition. And many people have very different meanings of what we are understanding by Taliban. Now, there is, of course, one major segment what we call it the Quetta Shura, that is the Mullah Umar's group. It's not a regrouping as far as that group is concerned, because that group is already quite well grouped, and it never, because it was hosted by Pakistan government quite well for quite long. So, and it continues to be there, and I think when a Afghan army chief told BBC about 10 days back that, well, if you have to deal with the Taliban, why are you trying to talk to us? Talk to Pakistan. That is where the entire thing is in Pakistan. So, that particular group is quite united as far as its leadership is concerned. There was a small portion of it which wanted to talk to the Americans directly. That was the Baradari, and that was a point which the Pakistanis did not like. So they immediately arrested him, and thereafter did not allow that he should have any contact with anyone. They thought that everything should be done through the Pakistan ISI. Now in Karachi, what is happening is that there is a certain ethnic strife has taken place between the Afghans or Pashtuns and the local Muhajirs. Now, since that has taken place, then the Muhajirs are under the MQM, are quite well organized in certain areas like Orangi and other places where they've got big private armies sort of a thing with a lot of weapons and firepower. some of the Pashtuns or Afghans, if I may say, or the people from frontier area, because there are a lot of people who had come as earlier as refugees and haven't gone back, and who are in the transport trade are still there in Karachi and are living there. They said that we are going to reorganize and regroup to fight against the MQ. And some people gave them the name Taliban. Now, Taliban is a very generic name, as I said. It is not something which has to do with the Taliban of Mullah Omar, or it has got to do with Sirajuddin Haqqani's group, or the groups which are the other splinter groups, or the many of them. So these are the groups of the local Pashtuns. But the information that is percolating now is that they have developed certain contacts with Tehrik-e-Taliban of Pakistan. Now that Tehrik-e-Taliban of Pakistan has got contacts with them, it means that the influence of Baitullah Masood and others will come from Northwest Frontier Province and the Bajaur, Malkan, North Waziristan, South Waziristan area, all the way down to Karachi. And even in Karachi, we had some serious incidents in the past. You know about this thing on the naval base that it was there at Makran base, and what was I forgetting? This thing base. And there were some other incidents which had taken place. If this ethnic violence between the Muhajirs and the Pashtuns also get entangled with the Talibanis or the Pakistani Talibani, this will be quite a dangerous thing. So this is regarding the, sorry for taking a lot of time, but this is not the Taliban that we are talking here about. This is a different form of a Taliban which has got a certain connectivity with Tehrik-e-Taliban in Pakistan or Baitullah Masood, and it is a local variant in Karachi which is mainly looking at MQM and the Muhajirs as their opponents.
Did you want to add?
Oh, sure. A little bit probably about sectarianism, I think. I mean, I think spread of sectarianism into Afghanistan primarily depend on the evolving relationship between Iran and Pakistan. Recently, Maulana Samiul Haq, he went to Iran and he had very cordial conversation with Ayatollah Khamenei, and I think a lot of other Taliban leaders have been negotiating with the Iranians. General Hamid Gul, he came back from Iran and he claimed on TV that Iran considers him as one of his friends, or their friends. So I think they're still negotiating. What happens in Afghanistan really, depends on how Pakistan and Iran are going to coordinate their political game in the post-NATO situation. And you must have heard Muhammad Taqi on Al Jazeera, saying that Hazaras in Quetta are targeted because they have refused to lend any support to influence the Hazaras of Afghanistan. So I think there's a direct connection with, it's not like an age-old, 1,400-year-old Shia-Sunni issue that is being played in Quetta right now, where the Hazaras are primarily targeted. It's not that the Sindhi Shias or the Punjabi Shias or other settler Shias. It is just the Hazaras being targeted, and I think it has a direct implication on Afghanistan. And I think, I don't know about a lot of Taliban activity in Karachi. I think they are present there, and their articles, they have been written where Pakistani army knows their addresses and the places where they're hiding in Quetta and Karachi. And I think eventually, whether it's Pakistani Taliban, Afghan Taliban, I think they all consider Mullah Omar as their leader. So there's no difference between, Pakistan is trying to promote this idea that TTP is their enemy. TTP is attacking military because they, in some way, are helping the United States. And in the post-NATO situation, that is going to change. They all consider Mullah Omar as their leader. They will unify under his banner. And I think they will have a very unified approach towards Afghanistan. And I think, that will show whether it's going to be a Shia-Sunni issue or a problem that will probably reflect on India and Afghanistan relationship, or Iran and Afghanistan relationship.
You had a question in the back?
Yes. As you have just been describing the situation in the region, and just painted a very realistic but very pessimistic picture of what the situation is. I guess I would be interested, Afghanistan is a very complicated country. I would be interested in hearing from you guys, in terms of a long-term strategy for developing peace and regional stability in the region, what are the efforts that you think what is the plan here? How do we get, we talked about the problems, but what is the way of forging a situation of regional stability, and what are the 2 or 3 or 4 things that absolutely need to happen for there to be stability and peace in the region?
Very basically, from my perspective, the reason I made the comments I did earlier is when you look at it from a security studies perspective and you look at it from a counterinsurgency perspective, it's really one of the first and most basic tenets of a counterinsurgency strategy that the most difficult obstacle to overachieve in trying to fight an insurgency is when that insurgent movement has safe haven in a neighboring country. It can make it virtually impossible. And I know there's a debate about what comes first, stability or development, security or development. And I hate to focus so much on the security side, but there was an American commander some time ago who said, I don't know if security is 10% of the problem or the solution or 90% of the solution, but it's the first 10%, even if it is only 10%. So I think that has to come first. The security has to be there before you begin working on more sort of complex and coordinated strategies to bring peace and stability. And the epicenter of that security question is the safe haven in the tribal areas of Pakistan. So from my sort of security studies perspective, which is what I do at our think tank, that is where I believe the attention needs to be focused. But beyond that, there is a great deal of work to be done. But we haven't even established that basic foundation to where we can begin to work on the second, third, and fourth tier problems.
But haven't we been trying to do that for the last decade?
We have, except we haven't addressed the epicenter of the problem. We've been trying to find and build security in Afghanistan, but we've been doing it without addressing the problem next door. And I think it's problematic because everybody recognizes that that's the problem, but nobody here in the U.S. government has come up with a realistic solution. I think there was a hope that we could induce a change in behavior through carrots, and then small sticks were tried, and then we've gone back to carrots, and we've sort of had a policy of hope that eventually there would be a mindset change and a change in strategy across the border. And frankly, it just hasn't happened.
Well, a long-term strategy to bring stability to end terrorism, what can be done? A couple of things. I think one thing that needs to be done is that let the United Nations specify the cost involved for the countries who support them, whose land is used for supporting them, whose governments or whose intelligence agencies engage in causing violence in transborder violence through the terrorists. Let us go a little ahead from UN Resolution 1333, for example, and all that, and say, as we have got for many other things for the countries which transgress various types of international laws. And if Pakistan is told that these are the sanctions that will be slapped in case these things are done, or for that matter, if there is a new type of government in Afghanistan that comes which does not fully support the international effort against global terrorism. I think that is the first thing that needs to be done. If we had taken this sort of a step against Pakistan in 2001, when Pakistan floated in 2005 a theory and sold it to the United States that there are soft Taliban and there are hard Taliban. Soft Taliban are those whom we will be able to win over, and then they will support the effort against global terror, and the hard Taliban we are going to finish. And that is how they had a deal with Taliban. Under the Dadul Ali, they were able to, they not only released a lot of people from jail, but even gave them their weapons. And who were the soft Taliban? Soft Taliban were the Taliban which were supporting and towing the Pakistani. And the hard Taliban were the one who were opposing them, irrespective of the fact what was they do about the global terrorism and others. So Pakistan at that point of time was able to get the control, complete control, almost complete control from 2005 to 2008 almost, of Taliban, because lot of the opponents within Taliban movement were exterminated by them, and the Americans were quite happy about it, that Pakistan had killed it. Now, it was at that point of time that we knew that they had signed a secret understanding with Commander Dadullah, who was subsequently killed, in which all these things were spelled out. Probably the document was sufficient to declare that Pakistan is no more the frontline state or a non-NATO ally for fighting terrorism, because it has a written agreement with them that who are the people that they are going to eliminate and whose weapons are to return. And it is only one of the things that they do. So I think that is the first thing. You have to maintain and put decide the principles. Lay the rules of the game have got to be different, and the costs have to be slashed. I think the second thing that we require is that one very good thing that has happened in the last 10 years is control over finances. And control over finances is much more difficult in today's world. But the same effort has not been done in control over explosives and firearms. Now, weapons cannot be these things manufactured except the very rudimentary type of these things, the automatic weapons and others, or the explosives, particularly the ordnance grade explosives, cannot be made in the handled factories or small factories. And all of them have got through a spectroscopy test. Their origin can be traced, and ordnance grade explosives can be made only by the ordnance companies, that is government companies. Whether it is RDX, whether it is Semtex, whether it is PTCN, it is any one of these things. Any of the ordnance grade explosive which is to be used, we can find it out what is the country of origin. It is just no problem if there is a certain cost which is liable. And again, it's a system. We know that whether it is the hand grenade or whether it is the amplified system or the AK-47, we can all trace the origin. Which country or which batch they have come, even if they have come from a regular manufacturing unit. And a lot of it is coming from China, particularly in Yunnan province. It is coming a lot of gun running. The amount of the focus that we had given on terrorist financing, if we had given 25% of that to gun running and explosive control, probably we would have got the much interest. I think that's the second important thing that needs to be done, and I think a couple of others.
I mean, I believe that, Pakistan, like any other nation, has the right to have strategic relation with its neighbors. It has the right to have friends and supporters. But the problem is that Pakistan has always found the extremists in different countries as its allies, and then use them to have leverage in those countries. That is the main problem. For instance, if you look at in Central Asia, if you look in Afghanistan, if you look in India, Nepal, everywhere you see Pakistan's allies, most of them are non-state actors and they're extremists. Pakistan has never tried to go and have relations with, let's say, a secular faction in these countries, Afghanistan or Central Asia. There's a magnet, a huge magnet attached to Pakistan, where the moment USSR disintegrated, the first thing they saw in Central Asia was the extremist. And so I think that is the attitude of the Pakistani establishment. Obviously, I don't really blame civilian governments. Civilian governments have tried their best. People's Party has tried. Nawaz Sharif has been trying. They have paid price. Nawaz Sharif has paid really heavy price to be, trying to be friendly with other nations. And the same is with Bhutto family, and but the military has to change, I think, this attitude that they really do not have to see themselves as like a natural ally of all these terrorists in different part of the world, and they can have cordial relations with a democratic Afghanistan or democratic India or democratic Central Asia. And, if that does not change, then I think your point is right. 10 years, maybe another 10, 20 years, and I think this attitude of, I really don't want to go into ideologies here, but when a nation is created on two-nation theory, which sort of is a country is created on the basis of hatred towards another country, that we can't coexist. There's no point that we can live together. We have to have our nation. There's no cultural similarity, there's no religious similarity, so we can coexist. I think that is sitting in Pakistan's foundation, and I think that is leading to a lot of policies and Pakistani military is really I think stuck with that. So I think that needs to change, and Pakistan needs to give up its relationship with all these rogue elements in the world.
One in the back here first.
Utsav Chakraborty from the World Legal Council. This is a question for Mr. Doba. With the impending withdrawal in 2014 of the NATO forces from Afghanistan, what changes do we see happening in Kashmir? Because the last time Taliban was in control of Afghanistan, things went really bad in Kashmir. So I would want to know your opinion on what might happen in Kashmir and what preemptive steps can be taken to counter it.
If I take the situation totally in a very compartmentalized way, that what happens in Afghanistan is not going to have any impact. So if there is a troops withdrawal, and after there are troops withdrawal, there will be a type of a government there, but it is the government that comes, and there will be a certain amount of the troops which will still continue to remain there, it will not. Problem will come if how Pakistan uses and exploits that situation. If Pakistan uses and exploits that situation, thinking that this is an opportunity where West has outsourced a lot of its responsibility on Pakistan, and they have got almost a physical presence in that country now, and probably they would also be able to increase their political clout by virtue of the type of relationship that they have been maintaining or they have cultivated over a long period of time with the Taliban, with Karachi, Ideological, Ismail Khan, and all these people. If that happens and Pakistan thinks that now there is not much of a deterrence, even the Americans have left from Afghanistan and probably they are too much dependent on us for carrying out their agenda in Afghanistan, they can go, or some adventurous amongst them can think of raising the temperature in Kashmir again. If they decide to do that, if the ISI decide to do that, then a favorable backyard in Afghanistan will help them in having some of the sanctuaries there, getting some boys who are taken away from, who are recruited from the Jammu Kashmir area, sending them to Khost or some of the other camps which are established in this thing, and then having a certain amount of demand. That they're operating with certain demand. They may also be able to get some of the boys from Afghanistan to join hands with the Kashmiri resistance. Mainly, which was studied last time also, which did not work, that this is an international Islamic problem, and in which there is an Islamic, there is an international participation, and that is why in 1995-96 they got 3 persons from Turkey. They got 2 from Middle East, who normally do not operate in Kashmir, don't even know who is in Kashmir. And these persons, this group, was used for kidnapping of 9 foreigners, of which there was an Israeli, there was this thing, and 3 or 4 of them were killed in Anantnag, which was this thing by Abu Samad, Turkey. Now, we are quite wondering that why this man from Turkey is, and why was this task given to Turkey? Because they thought that by this they would be able to create a type of situation which was created in Afghanistan when the Soviets had come there, that this is an international Islamic cause in which all Islamic countries are participating. So in that they might involve Afghanistan. That is this thing. But then still we have got to be extremely cautious. I think the country has got to be very, very watchful.
Yes. Right, so it was very enlightening to hear all this. And one theme is constantly emerging that US knows what is going on and how Pakistani army and ISI are supporting terrorist activities in Afghanistan and in turn in India. There is a huge cost that our nations are paying in, whether it be 9/11, whether it be loss of life of soldiers in Afghanistan, or over 90,000 lives in India in terrorist activities, or within Pakistan, all the minorities that are being affected. Hindus being the largest of which were about 25% in 1951 and now less than 2%, about 1/5 of population. But why does US continue to put in billions of dollars? You are talking about carrots and stick and taking in from the analogy of what Einstein said about insanity. For how long, I mean, this billions of dollars that are being put, there should be some checks, some balances to stop that at some point, because Musharraf himself directly acknowledged that using this money he has during his time totally revamped Pakistan Army, rearmed them. So where does this end?
You would like to say nothing. Basically, how to do it.
Well, to be fair, many people in the U.S. have been calling for an end to this a long time ago, for much tighter restrictions on the aid that goes to Pakistan, for a complete cessation of aid to Pakistan. And that's security think tank scholars have been saying this for some time. You've had congressmen more recently and senators come out and argue for the same thing. So it's not as if nobody agrees that there needs to be sort of a tightening of the screws on the financial tap. But the administration generally, and to be fair, the Department of Defense has generally resisted that, because it's not quite as simple as we've sort of made it out to be. It's not as if, well, if you just crack down hard on the Pakistanis, the problem will go away, or they suddenly will have a change of mindset. There are real risks to taking a very hard line with Pakistan as well. And, for many years, we were very dependent on Pakistan for supply routes in and out of Afghanistan. The nuclear equation is a constant thing on people's minds here. So there's sort of a fear, I think, in Washington of we don't like what's happening and we want it to stop, but we're not quite sure how to get it. And we fear that if we go a little too far, we will either end up hurting ourselves, or we will push them toward an even more extreme position. And in some ways, I sympathize with policymakers here, because there aren't good, easy options. It's not as if if we just did X, everything would be okay. It's tough. It's a tough issue. But I think it's been bad enough for long enough that it's time to try something else. Well, I think we're going to end the panel on that note. I see a few more hands have come up, but it's been a long day. We've been here for 4 hours. We've had 3 really fantastic panels, a great panel of speakers. Let me thank Mr. Doval and Mr. Searing for a wonderful panel. Let me thank you all. Thank you all for coming. I encourage you all to stay up to date with U.S.-India Political Action Committee, the American Foreign Policy Council, FIDS. Will be running events like this in the future. Thank you again.
Thank you all. I want to conclude this wonderful conference by appreciating all the great speakers. Let's give them all a big hand. We had a full day of tremendous sessions, dialogue, Q&A. And the conclusion, I think, is that handling Afghanistan is very, very important for Afghans themselves, for the country, for the region, as well as for the United States. And the regional players do need to be involved. And I think that's the conclusion. We've heard from some fantastic speakers from the president of the Bharatiya Janata Party, the main opposition party in India, from the chairman of the Foreign Relations Committee, the ranking member of the Foreign Relations Committee, the co-chair of the India Caucus, Congressman Crowley, from former Foreign Secretary of India, Mr. Sibbal, the former head of intelligence of India, Mr. Doval, and many other speakers who have given a tremendous perspective of their vast knowledge on this area. So let's continue this dialogue, and we hope that you had tremendous value. And again, thank you so much for coming.
Hello. On behalf of Feeds, let me thank you everybody, Ram Madhavji, Sibbalji, as well as Dovalji, Smith, and audience everyone. Thank you very much. Thank you.